Hey guys, welcome to a new podcast to our network.
Woo!
Exciting. We have a fun podcast planned for you guys. It's a summer series where we're going to focus on the business of college sports. And Chris Williams is not the host.
No, thank God.
He's our guest.
I don't want to host another podcast. I'll sit in the two chair.
Well,
we've wanted to do these together
Yeah.
for a while, and this will be good because it's something that I think you've kind of grown into with your professional life outside of what we do here. And it's something that I didn't necessarily think I would be that into 15 years ago, but I've had to really grow into it. And the plan, I believe, and Jacqueline's kind of going to run the show here, but to have different people come in on different aspects of college sports, and I happen to be the fan site guy, so we're gonna talk a lot about that. I get all these questions all the time when I go to advertisers and when I speak about how Cyclone Fanatic became what it is. So yeah, we'll do a little background on that today.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like when you started it, that's when I sat down and I was like, all right, how are we going to approach it? I look back to when you started it. This was like an anomaly. It was very taboo. Like people weren't as open.
People hated us.
Yeah, like people did not like the idea of sites, like just websites in general.
The first year we didn't even get credentialed. Like they were, if it weren't for Jamie Pollard, we wouldn't have gotten press credentials in 2009. And people like, I wasn't this like guy out of nowhere either. I've been around.
Right.
They all knew me, but the idea of a fan site that wasn't Rivals or Scout, which were the two networks, the idea of anybody doing that as their full-time job, it just didn't exist.
Right. It was unheard of. Well, even like in 2018, I think it was when I interned with the Vikings during training camp, they had like one specific day, one specific practice. Like these types of blogs and sites were allowed to be there. That's the only time. They weren't allowed any other time.
Wow.
And that was just in 2018.
Yeah. It's come a long way. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I'm excited. I'm very passionate about this. I do want to thank our sponsor, and they were one of the reasons and they used to sponsor Title IX. Stephanie and Elisa are done podcasting with us now, unfortunately. But the Ivy College of Business at Iowa State is a great partner of ours, and had a lot of talks with them about what can we do. And this ties in with what they're doing as well. As we have a great relationship with them. When I talk to journalism students all the time, they always ask me for advice, and I go, get a business degree. Well, I want to be a sports writer. I don't care. Get a business degree. I promise you, at the worst case scenario, you got it in your back pocket. You're there an extra semester, but I wish I had one, and I've thought about getting one. I just maybe that's in the future, but we appreciate the Ivy College of Business at Iowa State. They are a longtime supporter of what we're doing. We appreciate Dean Spalding for his support. And I want to congratulate him too for his announced retirement, which is coming up. He's got another school year left, but this is one of the best business schools in the United States of America. And I love their online master's program. To me, like it's a no-brainer for somebody who's thinking about it. You can take as much time as you want. So, hey, meet your new network, the Ivy College of Business. They're presenting this here. So where do you want to start, Miss Cordova?
I mean, let's go all the way back. You said 2009?
Well, okay. Yeah. So Jeremy Lind, who's a really sharp computer guy. You still see him floating around on the forums. He started this, I believe, in 2004, late 2004, early 2005.
Right. It was a message board.
It was just what was called a V-Bulletin message board. Which V-Bulletin would be like what WordPress is now.
Okay.
So like basically every message board in the world was V-Bulletin at that point. Yeah. And I was at scout.com at the time running Cyclone Nation. And this Cyclone Fanatic blog, we didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
These things didn't exist. It pops up, and Jeremy, maybe interesting to get Jeremy in here, but he had some sources of some sort in the athletic department, and he broke a couple stories, and we're all kind of, who the hell is this guy? And, and I'm at the time, Twitter didn't exist. I don't even think Facebook did. It was like the face page at first. If you've watched the Social Network movie, like you had to sign up through your Iowa State email address. Like our parents couldn't even be on it. It was a much better place back then. No offense. But yeah, like, so you couldn't really. So what I would do with Cyclone Nation, and we did this with Cyclone Fanatic too, but I would print out flyers and I would walk around the tailgate lots giving flyers to people, asking them to subscribe to Cyclone Nation.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing that.
I did that every game for about 5 years. And it was hard to get subscribers. And then Jeremy comes along with this free site and basically anything goes. It was like the Wild West over there. And people really liked it.
Yeah.
So Jeremy gets the credit because he created this really great. So what Jeremy's strength was that I certainly don't have is the technological skills, where he made it an awesome community, where he gets the credit for making Cyclone Fanatic like the online community that it is, where people would go on there. I mean, I used it all the time. Like, hey, I got guys, I need a new computer. Does anybody have any recommendations? And you get 15. It was basically like Reddit for Iowa State fans.
Yeah, I was going to say, remind me of Reddit.
Yeah, that's how I would say that Cyclone Fanatic is in its infancy.
And what was it? Did he call it Cyclone Fanatic from the get? Okay, I couldn't remember if that
and
was the case.
That logo is his, the tornado logo with the C and the F. Jeremy, I don't know if he came up with it, but that was his. We have not touched that.
Yeah.
Since we took it over.
No, it's a great logo.
My wife and I were talking about this last night with Aiden, actually, where it was in, I think it was the summer of 2008, where I got a call from Jason Luch, and actually it was Ken Miller from KXNO who called me, and I was down at the Lake of the Ozarks, and he's like, I want to connect you with these people because they were, they used to read your work on Cyclone, and I was working radio in Southwest Iowa at the time, but I was still in the even when I was doing that, I knew I wanted to stay with Iowa State doing that thing. So I was writing for the rival site, Cyclone Report, on the side.
Okay.
So I was still in the mix, and those guys called me, and I said, okay, to Paul Clark, I'm going to try and do this thing on my own. Thanks for everything. And I started they had purchased it from Jeremy. And I don't know exactly how it went down, but they had purchased the URL or whatever came with it.
Yep.
Like there was a Twitter feed at the time, but Twitter was just starting. And they kind of just gave me the keys and said, run with it. And I came up with a 5-year plan, and I knew that I was passionate about the fan site thing. I never really wanted to work for a newspaper or anything like that. So here we are.
But like, how do you know to take the leap? Like, was it just a matter of the fact that these people trusted you and handed you the keys? Or, like when you sat down and thought, okay, I'm going to quit my job. Like, how do you make that decision?
Pretty stupid. Yeah, I mean, it really a dumb decision. If you're just thinking rationally. I mean, me and Ashley just got engaged, and she's in vet school, hemorrhaging money.
Yeah.
Right. Like she's going to graduate with 6 figures of debt. And I just gotten to the point in my radio career where, I mean, I felt like they were going to make me the GM at this station. Like they were wanting to keep me there long term. And at that area, like there's not a lot of young people that stay. And I was making good money at a place where the cost of living is nothing. I had already paid off my student loans, and I was very comfortable, but I didn't like wake up wanting to, eat what you kill, that type of deal.
Yeah.
You know me well enough to know like just how I'm wired. And the idea that not only like you get back doing the Iowa State thing, get up there, but where you basically have all this like creative freedom is what appealed to me. And I knew we were doing an uphill battle. And I still think to this day, like we were 10 years ahead of what like the time. Because I go to these marketing people and they looked at us like we were crazy. They didn't know what a message board was. I mean, a lot of these marketing people at the time are in their 50s They're not on Twitter. They never been on a message board,
Yeah.
right? And then and then I'm going to the athletic department, and I'll never forget talking to Tom Crochelle, like, and he's my buddy. I love Tom. I want to get him on one of these. We should get Tom on one of these. It'd be fascinating. But like they didn't even know how to deal with it because there were like eventually there would become like these Wide Right and Natty Light type sites that were these fan sites, but the only ones that existed were Scout and Rivals. And if you didn't do that, then you were a hack. And we said, no, we're going to do this full time. Like, this is like, we're going to cover Iowa State. Like, that's all we're going to do. Well, does the Register own you? No, like it's just us. All we're doing is Iowa State, and nobody could comprehend it. And somehow it got up the chain to Pollard and Steve Malchow, and they knew me and they knew the partners that had purchased it. And Steve Malchow, I remember coming up to me at a press conference, and I knew all these guys. Like I was the first person to interview Pollard when he got the job. Like he was, I've known Jamie forever.
Yeah.
So like we weren't these bad actors, but it took a while to prove ourselves, right? Like I remember one time somebody in the athletic department like accused us of like having really bad intentions with this thing. It's like, no, like the guys who own this thing are Iowa State fans who over decades were pissed because they felt like Iowa State didn't get enough coverage. That's why they bought the thing and hired me. And like, it was with like the best intentions at all, but then it was my job to make it, a brand and like be somewhat journalistically sound.
Yeah.
And I was much better at that 10 years ago than I am today. I've kind of just, I'm kind of just a full out homer now, which is a lot more fun.
Well, and how old were you when this was happening? So you would have been fresh out of college?
25.
Okay.
So I would have been 25 when I started at Cyclone Fanatic.
So then where do
26 tops.
How are you as a 25-year-old? Because I think of my confidence and where I was when I was 25. And I'm 29 now.
Yeah.
But
like you're 30, you're coming up.
I'm getting close.
Man,
but like
crazy.
How do you walk into a room with these people who think your product is fake and dumb and you have bad intentions? How did you navigate that? I mean, Jason just gave you the keys, right? Like, was he going with you to these meetings? What did all of that
he did
look
a
like?
couple at the start, but he has so much other stuff going on. He didn't hire me to have to hold my hand.
Right.
And you've been in this culture that we have here. It's very much a self-motivation. And if you're not self-motivated, then it's not going to work.
Yeah. You'll crumble.
Yeah. And I thrived in that. I just thrive off of doubters, and it's such a terrible way to go through life where you look for that. But like, I think back to those days. I had the Newton Daily News turn me down. The Knoxville radio station didn't hire me. Trying to think of other ones. Iowa State's own athletic department didn't want me as a sports information person. They told me no. And it just was like, I was kind of like, fuck you guys. I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And like, but I came at the right time though. Cause if this would have happened 2 years earlier, it wouldn't have worked.
Right.
Twitter didn't exist. If it would have happened 5 years later, it wouldn't have worked because somebody else would have done it. So it was like the perfect time. And I also was totally irrational about how important I was. Like, I thought I was a bigger deal than I was. Like, so I would walk, and I had really good experience. So the best thing ever happened to me was going back to Shenandoah and working, because I had like this, like, I went from a really, really bad situation at Scout, like that's horrific. I think back to the sleep that I lost and just bad.
Yeah.
To this company that's this heritage radio station that's been around for 100 years that serves real purpose back home, where it's the only media they have. Severe weather, funerals, school boards, city council, like it's real. Like it is grassroots journalism, and you're held to a really high standard. And they were, it was the best thing for me because it gave me structure, and they also did a couple things. So I don't even know if you know this, but I would cover Royals and Cardinals spring training in the spring.
I didn't know that. No.
And my boss, Don Hanson, who's retired now, great guy, learned a lot from. I was pretty nervous the first time I'm getting ready to go on an airplane to go down to Surprise, Arizona for 2 weeks, or Jupiter, Florida to cover Major League Baseball. Like, what the hell I'm in Shenandoah, Iowa. Why am I? But we were affiliates. We're like KMA is like the longest running Royals affiliate in the country, I think.
Okay.
Like, so that, and I was pretty nervous. And Don told me, he's like, hey, just walk in there like you own the room. Walk in there like you belong. Nobody will doubt you. And so I was with the Cardinals first, and it's Tony La Russa is the manager at this point. Aiden, you're a baseball guy. You'll like this. It's a good story. And I've done all my research on the Cardinals, and I've got all my notebooks, and I'm ready to go. And I'm in the scrum, and I've got my old KMA microphone, and all these beat writers are asking, and these baseball beat writers are dicks. Like, they're the worst. They're all divorced, and they're very rugged. They drink all the time. Like, they're baseball beat writer. That's a rough life. And I pop up with a question out of nowhere about their bullpen. Oh, La Russa, your bullpen was pretty weak last year. What are you doing to work on that? Because I'm acting like I own the place, like my boss told me to.
Yeah.
And Tony La Russa breaks his scrum and goes, who the fuck is this guy? To his PR guy. And I'm like, Chris Williams, KMA radio.
It was pay money to see that.
Well, luckily social media wasn't big enough. Like, nobody was like posting it on Twitter to make me look.
Can
like
you imagine if you did that today?
It would crush your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that did, but I guess my point is, where did all that come from? Is really good mentors. And then Matt and Jason and Brian, like, at the time, like, I didn't really know what failing was. Yeah. Because we were starting something out of nothing. So it was like, worst case scenario, I tried. But Jeremy did the hard part, though, because he had the community. So we already had a good chunk of viewers. Mm-hmm. And then it was just like, don't screw it up. And half of them already knew who I was from my scout days. Yeah. So I had done some legwork while I was in college to get to that point. And we just really benefited from being locally owned because, at a time where newspapers were trying to figure out what they were because classified ads weren't valuable like they used to be, we were able to invest in different ways to, we started a radio show. Yeah. We bought time on KXNO and started selling ads, and, we were very nimble and could do whatever we thought would work.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not even you that's necessarily crazy one. It's like Jason and those guys.
Yeah.
They're kind of crazy for investing in it when you had no reason to believe it.
They were very forward thinking.
Yeah. Kind of love that. You're right. We should bring them up.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see what was in Jason's head.
Right. Like, how do you, as Jason, in the years that I've known him, like, what made you believe this site was going to be what it is?
I met with Matt Lazier at a Panera Bread at the Mall of the Bluffs in Council Bluffs, Iowa. And I don't know what I said to him, but it sold him on it. And I don't even think I had physically met Jason before I took the job. I talked to him on the phone a bunch of times. But I trusted it. I trusted those guys. Like, they, I kind of, like, we started where it was like, I'm just going to do what I was doing for Clark for Cyclone Fanatic, and let's see what happens. Yeah. And then Jason's such a big Iowa State fan. The closer we got to the season, he's like, he was itching to, like, do more. Yeah. And I remember driving up, Iowa State played, I want to say it was North Dakota State in Paul Rhodes' first game in 2009. It was on a Thursday night. And who in the heck did I ride? I think it was Carper. Adam Carper and I drove together. For some reason, he was back home, and we tag teamed it. And I remember, like, writing a column in the car on the way back, and I got some sort of a note from Jason, who was like really excited. And he was an Ankeny guy. And I think that Paul Rhodes being hired may, you know, all those guys were super fired up because they'd known Rhodes forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden this turned into Jason saying, I want to get you up here for basketball season. And I was like, oh, wow. And then my first full-time day, it was the Monday after how old were you in 2009?
Like 12, 13.
Yeah, when you were 12. But it was Iowa State lost to Nebraska. No, they beat Nebraska. It was the Arnaud. It was the 7 turnover game. And then my first full-time day with Cyclone Fanatic was the Monday after that. So yeah, like those guys, they were really smart. Like this was hard, like nobody knew where media was going at that time. And they were just pissed off Iowa State fans though.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a lot of Iowa State fans who will resonate with it. Like,
yeah,
they didn't get covered. Like what you guys see now, like where there's 15 people at a press scrum, there used to be 3 of us.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like when you put it into perspective, especially with the current climate of our industry and just like the way corporate really rules over things, Jason caring about it so much the way he does is actually very unheard of. Like if you go to the top of the register, you know, I don't know who's at the top of the register. That's just the biggest one.
Somebody in Gannett in like Washington, D.C.
Right.
Yeah.
Like someone who's not here, not
Carol Hunter's the publisher there.
Yeah. Right. Like Jason's upstairs.
Yeah.
He's a names with us majority of the time.
You know, and it helped that he took a loss for a long time. We didn't make money in the I'd love again, we should totally get him on here. We didn't make money in this company for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I remember again, it's just like I don't know how I got here because at the time, I'll never forget, it was like my first day and Jason had his big ass horse mural in the background. And I'm like,
of course he did.
He's like, your first job is to cover the team. Okay, sir. And then I need you to sell some ads so we can make some money on this thing. Okay. Well, like I didn't know I was going to be selling ads when I took the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't, nobody likes to sell.
Right.
Like it's not, but then it turned into like, all of a sudden our website's getting attacked by Russian bots. What the hell am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know, but those guys, like the reason it worked is because he never told me no.
Yeah.
He hired me and for some reason trusted me. And, you know, we've been wrong a lot. We've screwed up some, but I think our hits have been better than our misses. And like the reason it worked is because he didn't get discouraged.
Yeah.
Like it could have been a deal really easily where those guys are, you know, screw this. We're losing money every month. Why are we still doing this?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure we were making money a couple years into it. It just took a little bit. But the good thing is they weren't paying me very much either. Yeah. So we had really low overhead and they stuck with it. But again, if it wasn't locally owned by a guy who was passionate about it, like Jason was, it would have failed.
100%.
It absolutely would have failed, to your point.
When you look back in those early years, was there ever a moment where you guys like sat down and were like, this is working? Like, holy crap, our vision's like it's working out.
Yeah. I don't think there was a moment where we had that conversation, but where I remember it feeling really good was there was a year when the Rhodes thing starts going and Hoiberg's there with basketball and like Fred and I really hit it off well. Like we had a lot in common. It helped that TJ was the assistant. So we had this, but all of a sudden Paul Rhodes comes to Jason and said, hey, because we had started this recruiting party in 2005. Like really, I mean, when I was with Scout, and it was Steve Dace's idea. And we would go to this old bar called Three Bag in West Des Moines, and like 15 people would show up. And it would be like Chris Ash and Tony Alford would come, and we would have a DVD of the football recruiting class. And we would play it on the big screen, and then these guys would talk about the team, like the players coming in. This is back when National Signing Day was like a holiday. Well, we did that for a couple of years, whatever. I leave, it disappears, whatever. And then I'm like, I want to bring this back.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it the first year. And I want to say like Shane Burnham and a couple guys come and it was fine. Like we didn't make any money on it, but it's just a good thing for our people.
Mm-hmm.
Rhodes comes to Jason and says, I want to bring my whole staff there. Okay. And they're coming off of a bowl win in that first year that nobody saw coming. I mean, that happened. Iowa State hadn't been good in football for a long time. And we have this deal where Rhodes brings his entire coaching staff on this bus, and we do it at the cake stand in West Des Moines, and the place is bonkers. Completely full 2 hours before the event. You can't even walk. And like it was like hair on the back of your neck, like, holy shit, we reached this many people? Like these people care about this? Like it was unbelievable. And somehow it gets to Hoiberg or whatever, and Otzelberger and Hoiberg are like, hey, we want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like all of a sudden these coaches where we used to be these pariahs,
Mm-hmm.
now they want to utilize us from a promotion standpoint because they see we reach a different, younger crowd than maybe what the email list that the athletic department has. And I'm not dumb. They weren't doing it because they liked us. They were using us, which is fine. And then we used them to get people.
Right.
But that was the moment to me that it was that Tom Herman going bonkers on stage, Wally Burnham, you know, that was where it felt like we never felt comfortable.
Right.
But it certainly felt like we were heading in the right direction. This is something we can work with.
Yeah. I mean, those are still parties that were happening when I started.
Yeah. And then the collective came around and we kind of handed it off to them because it made sense. Well, and then the athletic department started trying to one up us, which whatever, they can do whatever they want. It's their product. But so they start doing an event at the exact same time and they start keeping the coaches there. And then it was like, well, Campbell doesn't want to do two of them. And like, it just turned into a deal I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in charge of that anymore. I'd rather do the less corporate, like, and let Bloom and his team, they do a great job. They do way better work than we could do, and it helps them out, and it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
But that was the thing, that recruiting party, I'll never forget how crazy that night was.
So then would you say that's one of your favorite memories from those early days or early years?
Yeah. Yeah, that was. I mean, you know, I think back to, it's just the events, the people. One of my favorite ones was our trip to San Antonio. We had a really good bowl trip that year. We've done a lot of, I really like doing the events like in Eastern Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Our event in Omaha this year during the NCAA tournament was incredible.
Was it? It looked like it.
When you can go to these pockets of people that don't get the events very often, like that's the most fun.
Right. And I mean, who gets to, even today, it's not that common. Like, who gets to just go hang out with the people who inform them on their favorite team?
Yeah. And I gave you guys those books. I hope you've read yours about super fans and I think what we do pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't, then I apologize, because it's like the core of what I think we should be doing is being accessible to. It's like a big team, right? Like we wouldn't have jobs and stuff if it weren't for. So I think college athletics is like screwing itself, because it's like you take the fans for granted and then all of a sudden, like, none of this exists.
Right.
And yeah, I think that there's real value in, like, because when these people can hang out with us, and that's what Rhodes saw, like, to Rhodes' credit, and Fred did it too really well. Matt did early on, and then, you know, I feel like COVID changed everything, where everybody's less accessible now.
Yeah.
But Rhodes saw the value in going around and shaking everybody's hand and taking every selfie. McCarney did that brilliantly, but it was in a pre-social media era. But Rhodes, there's a reason why, even when his teams weren't winning, season ticket sales were going up every year. And to Pollard's credit, with doing that tailgate tour when they started it, Iowa State's done this as well as anybody in the country, because even when they weren't winning across the board, people were still becoming Iowa State fans because they had that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said the way our job matters is if we make people care about the people we cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
You've done a good job with wrestling. Like, it helps that they're good.
Yeah, right. Winning always helps, but if you can make people care about the guy, even if he can't win, I've done my job.
My favorite story I've ever written in my entire career was on Conrad Holly.
That was a good one.
The walk-on basketball player. And
yeah.
I love watching how much people love him.
They do. He's very popular. I see all the tweets and yeah, people just love
him.
He's
maybe the most popular player on the entire roster.
I mean, he's talked about nationally too. I see it on ESPN when they're like the CEO.
Yeah. Like, and credit to TJ for seeing, hey, we need to reward this guy.
Right.
And we're going to give him a title and his own seat on the bench and doing all that stuff. And then like Iowa State fans I'm guessing he's made some decent NIL money going around and speaking.
Probably.
Because he's this badass on the end of the bench. Like, yeah, you're right. Like and that's where I fear for college sports going forward. Because, I grew up in an era where, you'd watch these guys and gals for 5 years and they'd be in the same spot. And, I'd watch Lindsay Metters as a freshman who was a buddy of mine in college from being this punk rock girl from California to this, woman when she graduates. And like, I do have a little bit of concern going forward when it comes to that, if we're transferring every other year.
Yeah. When you look at Cyclone Fanatic and the sports climate right now, it's chaotic with NIL and transferring and all of the crazy stuff that's happening. When you look at our company and how we're doing our job, how do you see Cyclone Fanatic being impacted by all of it? Like, what do you think our future looks like? I know that's a loaded question.
Well, it is because it changes every year, Like, I feel like if you would have told me, let's take our football game day just as an example, or basketball game day. Like, we used to do these things where I'd go on Facebook Live and I'd be like, oh, we're presented by the Iowa Clinic, right?
Yeah.
And I'd talk for 5 minutes, no set schedule, just do it. To now, like, I mean, little peek behind the curtain, like, we're going to have fully produced pre and post game shows for football, men's basketball, women's basketball coming up.
Yep.
Maybe wrestling, if we can get there.
Maybe.
That's a deal where it's like, it used to be, how many people can we get on the website and how do we keep them there?
Right.
Then it was, okay, we're going to do a radio show to give us more inventory. Well, now we don't need the radio show because we have this huge podcast network. How do we monetize that? To now, like, we're almost like selling our social media feeds. And to me, like, everything going forward as far as what we do, like, while we greatly value like Rob's work and Connor's work covering recruiting, like, that'll never go anywhere.
Right.
But like, from a business standpoint, like, we have to create this like sponsored content that people care about. And what will that look like in 5 years? You know what I mean? But I do know that it's like, the one thing I've learned is not to be too locked in anything, because the audience is going to tell you what they want.
Right.
And I would prefer to go after every basketball game and write a 1,200 word column. That would be my preference. But when I click the button live and 10,000 people are there waiting, you listen to them.
Yeah.
Right. And you do it. So they'll tell us, like, that's how I view it. And the one thing that is our premium stuff too, it's like that grows all the time. I think people now in your generation are much more subscription based than mine was when I was your age.
Yeah, for sure.
We grew up with Napster where we were just stealing things.
Yeah.
Really, like, I want to listen to the Taylor Swift album. Okay. I'm going to go rip it off of that was just how we got stuff. And you guys are much more willing to, I'll pay $10 a month because I value this. Your generation is much more willing to go to the mom and pop restaurant compared to Applebee's. Right. And I think that's good for us. And I also think too that I just hope we can stay consistent, with like our people. Like that's the biggest thing. People want to support your work. They want to support Rob. They want to support Connor. Because I think we have a good group of like humans.
Which is crazy because I feel like our staff was so different from when I started, and now we're like I'm going into my 8th season. And I mean, Aiden works for us full time. Who would have thought we'd have a full time producer?
Aiden was like 10 years old 8 years ago.
Sure, why not?
But we have to so that's the thing too. It's like we have a lovely young intern sitting in here right now watching, and we need people behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily need 10 talking heads. Right. You can only say this so many things about Iowa State athletics. We need social media. Like you do more behind the scenes than people see in front of it.
Yeah.
Like that's your primary deal here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. Like it's a little scary when you look at everything and like where everything's going as far as the sports are.
Yeah.
But I also think that we've proven ourselves over the years where people aren't just going to abandon us.
Yep. And
also on top of that, like I think from a media standpoint, it's going to keep going in this direction.
Yeah, I think it's more in our direction than it was before. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, your generation is much more willing to get information from a fan site than mine was.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I think, I definitely, especially a lot of the people that I know are like diehard Iowa State fans, they 100% are more invested in what you're saying than what ESPN is saying.
And Hallie and Aiden, their generation is more than yours. Because it's just how like they grew up, like in high school, they were listening to podcasts.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Well, and I think about it too. It's like I was a religious Omaha World Herald sports page reader because that's the only thing I could get.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get the Register in my town. The internet didn't exist. So all I read was about the Huskers and Iowa, and I mean barely anything Iowa State ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's people like, oh, you weren't even an Iowa State fan growing up. Well, how could I be? I couldn't watch the games, couldn't read about them. My parents didn't go there. It wasn't cool to be an Iowa State fan in the 80s in Clarinda, Iowa. I'm sorry. Like, it's just the reality. But now, if you're an Iowa State fan, like, so we used to, I would get the Big Peach and read the Register. Well, okay. You got one Iowa State story, two Iowa stories. Then you got Drake, the Barnstormers, and some preps. Well, people don't really. There is still a group of people who want to read it all. I'm one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read it all.
Yeah.
But most people in your guys' generation, no, I'll just read about Iowa State. I'll just listen to the Iowa State stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where this niche thing, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I would agree.
The days of all of us sitting together on a Friday night and watching Full House and Family Matters and then talking about it on Monday, it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
I'm watching a documentary about the Cold War. You're watching Drive to Survive. So, Aiden may not even watch TV. Like, we're all just so different, and you can go anywhere you want to get what you want to consume.
Social media, man.
I don't know if it's a good thing, by the way, but I think that's where it's heading.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, selfishly, I'm glad that things have evolved the way they have. Just because what I thought I was going to do in sports media isn't what I'm necessarily doing, but I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I was pretty blunt with you from the beginning. Like, it's going to be hard to cover wrestling full time in any capacity. But the good thing is, like, now Flow Wrestling exists, and like there are avenues for people, to go and do those niche. It's still really hard.
I was gonna say wrestling's still really hard.
I didn't think that I would ever be able to pay you to be like our go-to wrestling PR person.
I definitely didn't know.
And you're not getting rich on this, but it's good side money, like on top of, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
I didn't think we would ever be here when you walked in these doors.
No, when I graduated, it was a little different because we kind of knew what I was going to be doing. But when I was in college and when you first hired me, I was like, I'm gonna have to leave Iowa. Like I'm gonna have to go do this elsewhere. And thankfully I didn't have to. I'm still here, but that's not the case always for everyone. So and I'm okay with it the way it is. Like I like doing it this way. Kind of the same reason you took the full-time job. You got the keys to do it however you wanted, which is exactly what you did with me. You said, here's the things you can do, go do them.
And I think too, again, I'll reiterate that if we didn't have good ownership, like none of it would have worked.
100%.
Because while I think I was doing a pretty good job of like covering the team back then, that still wasn't paying the bills.
Right.
You have to have ownership and management that will put in the time to see something out. And again, like those guys, I'd be like, hey, we need to upgrade the website. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know this is a bad time. I know we're not making any money, but I think that if we do this and if we put some ads in a different location, we may be able to double our revenue. Well, are you sure? No, I'm not. And I'm praying in the corner
crossed.
that it worked. And they always told me yes. And if I was wrong, they didn't fire me, so I was really kind of lucky in that sense that those guys, but I also, I think that they were all kind of visionaries as far as what media was going to be 10 years from now. But man, a good example too is like the ag industry. You would think that the world's largest Cyclone Iowa State website would have a ton of attention from agriculture companies wanting to get young ag people involved.
Okay.
Ag didn't touch us for a decade. We couldn't even get them to look at us. I mean, they would laugh us out of the room. And now, like, we have really good ag partners, right? Like that's one industry that's changed, I think, a lot with us. It's like, well, Grandpa died. It sucks, but Grandpa's not here anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, what's, Jimmy, the 22-year-old, is he watching Netflix as he's in that combine? Oh, he's streaming Cyclone Fanatic's new podcast on YouTube. Like that's
true.
That's the best example I can give is to like, we were just so far ahead of what we were trying to do that it was it was very ambitious. It was also kind of stupid. If it makes sense.
Right. Like if someone said, should I do the same exact thing? Would you tell them to do it?
Absolutely. As far as like me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I would tell anybody to go that route. And it helped too that like another reason this worked is because my wife was in vet school.
That's okay.
I think if I would have had like a normal wife at the time who's graduating from college, ready to settle down and start having babies, I don't know, because I would just pour everything into it. Like I'd wake up at 6. She was never there.
Right.
I would just work on Cyclone Fanatic forever. That's all I ever did. I didn't have any friends and names. That allowed me to, I wasn't distracted. And we didn't have any help. It's not like Rob didn't exist then. You and Aiden weren't around. It was me bothering the Lasers and Jason like, hey, and like that was a really, really a key too, because 3rd and 4th year of vet school, anybody who's been through that, like I literally never saw my wife.
Yeah.
Which was a good thing for Iowa State fans.
Shout out to Ashley's career.
Yeah. Oh man, I feel for those people too. That's a tough industry.
So when you sitting here today, I mean, we're in the alleged off season. Off season doesn't really exist anymore in my eyes, but
no, it doesn't.
What would you say is the most fulfilling thing right now as you look at it where you're sitting with everything you guys have accomplished? I mean, look at how big our team is now. Look at the site itself. Look at our social platforms. What makes this worth it?
The community part of it for sure is number one. And it's like our charitable stuff. Like I need to add it all up. I haven't in years, but we've given, when I say we, like our community, not us.
Yeah.
Our community's raised, I bet we've raised $250,000 over the last 10 to 15 years, whatever it is. I lose track.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
People show up.
They do, and they always support it. And again, it's that community thing. Like even if the teams suck, like they'll still show up because they like that community part of it.
Yeah.
And to me, like, and Jeremy started all that, and I thought Jeremy did a great job, but it was all digital. And I thought we did a pretty good job of transitioning like those usernames to people. And like our buddy Steve,
Mhm.
you know, Steve will have a tailgate and he'll post it on Cyclone Fanatic, and there'll be 50 Cyclone Fanatic users that'll just show up at this event and they'll all introduce themselves. And I went to one after the spring game and it was freaking freezing. Like it was, what a horrible, and they're all just hanging out, drinking Cody Road in the parking lot. What else is there to do? It's April and Ames.
Yeah.
But that to me is and it's like you, honestly, like you make me really proud. And I know Aiden and Connor, and like I like being able to, I want to step out of the spotlight at some point and be able to like just kind of pass the torch. And like I'll still be around, don't get me wrong, like you ain't getting rid of me in Bloom.
Yeah, we're not talking in a year.
No, but like to me, like I hope that's the case, that this is like a thing in 20 years, like whatever that will look like.
Yeah.
But I never thought we'd have an office.
I know. Look at this studio.
It's sweet. I never thought we'd have an office. Like I had never had an office really until I went to Shenandoah and had one for a couple of years. But then I've always just worked from an apartment. You know, just I don't know. It's the people though. Like man, like I'd love to know how many people like friends I've made. You know, I think of just who come to all of our events. It doesn't matter if it's an Easter. Like we have a group of, 500 people that will be at anything we do if we ask them to come, that's really hard in 2024 to get people locked in like that.
Well, Aiden and I were looking at all our old Facebook photos, and I recognized someone from a 2010 recruiting party.
Yeah.
I was like, that guy's always at stuff. I don't know. I can't remember his name.
Well, what's interesting about those two, and our events have gotten very different over, because when we started, it was all like my like college, like people my and Bloom's age.
Yeah.
And they'd all just show up and get drunk because they were young professionals. They didn't have families.
Yep.
And then we did notice like a drop off in our attendance and stuff. And I figured, oh, they're all having babies.
Yeah.
But then, the other thing too, that I think I'm very proud of is I don't think I've probably told you this. When we started, no women were on our website. Like it was like 98% two. We had no women on this website in our brand. And I have not run the numbers, but I would guess it's 70, 30, 60, 40 now.
Yeah.
And we brought Stephanie and Elise on. That was a big move at the time, and they did a good job with what they did. And then obviously bringing you on, like I'm very proud that we have a female covering wrestling. I think that's awesome. Like it's pretty unique.
It is, yeah.
And you do a good job. It's not like a token position, and then like we're not just giving opinions either. Like we have like Rob's the best sports writer in Iowa.
I think he's so talented.
The fact that was another deal too from a content, when Rob left his job with the Gazette to come to us, it was like kind of wanted to just give the bird to a lot of people at that point. Like, look, this guy's leaving there to come to our hack.
Right.
That was a cool moment.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like you guys got to keep me on my toes though, because like I don't get on the TikTok.
I don't even think Aiden has TikTok.
Yeah, and also no one calls it the TikTok.
Yeah, whatever. I don't do that. I'm not even on Snapchat. And like it's funny, like because I used to be like the cutting edge guy. Hey, you heard of Facebook? You guys heard of Twitter? We're gonna do Facebook Live. But like there's gotta be crap like that keeps popping up that you guys are gonna have to, and then there'll be a new Aiden at some point. I'm sure he'll leave.
I don't even want to think about that.
Just kidding, Aiden. Just messing with him.
Sounds like trying to push me out.
That would be like the shortest employment in history.
What are you, 6 months in?
I don't know.
Like that, yeah.
You guys keep it fun. So thank you. And like we have great advertisers too. It's like it just helps if you like the people you work with, right?
Yeah. So to close it out, you obviously have done presentations, you've talked in classes. If you had to give advice right now, and think of advice you haven't given, think of advice maybe you wish you would have gotten when you were a young buck in the game. Think of something you've never said in front of a room.
That I've never said.
Yeah, that you think would
Here's
be really
the problem.
valuable.
I say what's on my mind most of the time. It would definitely be to get a backup plan. And it would also be to, this is counterproductive, but I've told you guys, man, I do feel like just being very vulnerable here, all the screen time I've had has really had a negative impact on me, mentally.
Yeah.
And that would be the thing is, it's like wherever you guys go, you're gonna because the expectations are higher than ever. All these media companies now, it's like, oh, we're gonna lay off 3 people in your building. We're not gonna replace them, but we need to do all the work still. And you're not getting a raise. Right. So the expectations keep getting higher. And this is why we hired Aiden at Iowa Everywhere, and he helps out with Cyclone Fanatic, because it's you have to that stuff takes time, uploading and editing, and it's not I just crank out a column.
Right.
Back in the day, I would really and there's people who know a lot more about this than me, but I do think that I probably my brain has been rotted because of screen time. Yeah. And it would be dude, and also being scrolling Twitter is not working. We may think it is, it's not. What it's doing is it's a time sucker that you could be spending with your family, or stay the hell out. You have to escape at some point, because I know I made that mistake. I sat on my honeymoon and interviewed Royce White and wrote a column about it. And
that's crazy.
No, I really did.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. We got married and Fred had just gotten the job.
Yeah.
And I was the only writer. We didn't have anyone else. And I sat there and I'm talking to Chris Babb and writing a story, and Ashley's going on walks on the beach by herself on our honeymoon. Yeah. That's not there is a point where I get it, where you're young and you're hungry and you just want to kill, which is how I was and still am, unfortunately, to a degree. But you've got to be able to, because then it makes you better at what you do, right? You think oh, I need to work 17 hours a day and that's going to make me the best that I can be. I would tell you that if you work 8 to 9 hours a day, you're going to be way more fresh, probably, and better at what you do. Right. And don't be afraid to ask for help and that type of thing. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's good advice, because you said that. And I have a very vivid memory of, in the middle of being out with friends to eat, Kevin Dresser texted me and said, Sam Colbray's bumping up a weight. I'm telling you this so you can break the news. And I had to in the middle of this meal, I said, nobody talk to me. I have to write this story on my phone. Which obviously that's going to continue to happen.
There's stuff that happens.
Yeah, and if something like that happened again, I would go about it the same way.
If you're a political commentator and World War III breaks out, you're going to leave vacation.
But after I left Tulsa, I don't look at my phone again for a day. And it's come from you telling me hey, you should probably silence your notifications. Try not to check Twitter so much sometimes.
You know what the other thing is too? And I feel is just work on your communication skills always.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been bad at over the years. And I have really tried to improve over the last 5 years. It's just because I'm nuts doesn't mean you are. Right. Just because I graduated and literally just worked all the time doesn't mean that I should necessarily expect Aiden to do that.
Right.
And I think any young person that can look you in the eye and tell you hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm thinking, and not, you own it, and don't make excuses all the time. That's my biggest pet peeve. It's not always.
I do know that about you.
It's I actually just bought a sign in here.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that could be an episode in itself.
It says no excuses, nobody cares is what it says, like to a point. Well, like, yeah, like, isn't that just the key to everything now? Like, the older you've gotten, though, you've worked in multiple places.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously have a family and friends, and you've had boyfriends, and like, if you can't communicate, you really can't do anything.
Oh yeah, I think even our professional relationship and personal relationship has improved because we've evolved as people, and I've become way better at communicating.
You're way less insecure.
100%.
And I'm way better at talking to you in a way that doesn't freak you out because I've learned how you think. And I got to a point where it's like, I can't talk to her like she's me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Right?
I think there were times where you say things, I'm like, gosh, sounds like it.
But like, if somebody says that to me, I'm like, okay, I'm on it. Or like you, it would crush you.
Yeah.
And then you would be paralyzed mentally for 2 weeks.
Like if Kevin Dresser looked at me and said, who the fuck is this? Yeah. I would cry.
Right?
I would have cried in my first season.
Well, and it didn't feel good when Mr. LaRussa made that comment to me. It sucked.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I had that experience, though.
Right, of course.
It made Paula Rhodes a lot less intimidating.
It's good to be uncomfortable.
And, okay, I've said this to colleagues who have a hard time, but this would be good for any young person who wants to be in this industry.
Okay.
Not everybody's going to like you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
And if you get into this industry and you want everybody to like you, you're going to be really disappointed. Mm-hmm. And it probably means you're not doing your job very well. Right?
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to like you. In fact, it's probably best if half of them hate you.
I was say, I'm trying to think. And yeah, I can think of some people that don't like me.
Yeah, right? Like, I mean, you're going to, as long as you can look them in the eye and say, I've been fair.
Yeah.
John Miller gave me that advice back in, probably 2006. And when I was just green, like it was really kind of dumb, the position Scout put me in, to be honest. Like, I had no experience. I didn't even know how to report, let alone commentate.
Yeah.
I had no chops. And I really didn't know but that's how bad the Iowa State beat was at the time. Like there was just such a lack of coverage that they would throw anybody on there. And it happened to be me, but I failed so much. And I remember like Dan McCarney and me would go rounds, and I was such a little punk. And I would hate me too if I were him. Right?
Yeah.
Wayne Morgan hated me. Luckily, I think Finley kind of liked me, and we've Sanderson hated me for a while. He hated everybody. Pollard didn't. Like, Pollard was always great to me. Like, yeah. And I'm very loyal to Jamie because of that. Like, he was amazing to me. But like, you are going to make people mad, but as long as you can look them in the eye and not make it personal, and then you can live with yourself. But yeah, like you're not going to go to bed every night with warm fuzzies if you're really commentating and doing what you're supposed to do.
And it really is okay.
Yeah. Especially if you're doing the hard journalism, like if you're doing stuff like Birch is doing it, where you're breaking news and a lot of times it's not popular. Mm-hmm. If you're doing that the right way, people are going to be pissed at you.
Yeah. That'll happen.
Is that a good enough answer? I give you like 6 answers.
I would say, yeah. No, I hope people enjoyed this first episode. God knows how long it is.
About an hour.
It's a good.
You can see that little thingamajig up in the corner.
I've never looked at it.
Yeah. So we're kind of open to ideas too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to do one of these like on fan sites. I think I could do a little bit more on like the evolution of like the fan site world and bring a couple of those guys on. Mm-hmm. Bloom could come on and do NIL.
Definitely. NIL is a big one.
And then I think Rob's been doing this.
I was going to say Rob's experience alone is an episode in itself.
And Rob's a really good talker. Like when you get him going on stuff like that. I would say
get him going.
Real quick story on Rob. I know I've told this before, but I quit at Scout my senior year because it was such a toxic. There is a chapter in my book about that, about how much I hated that time at the end. But I was stringing for the Ames Tribune, which was another great experience that I had, which I'm really glad that I did because I went and got real journalism experience, and it helped me grow. And I was at a South Hamilton basketball game, girls basketball game.
Okay.
I don't even know what town that is. Aiden, what town is South Hamilton High School? Jewel. Okay. And it was like a district basketball game, and they're playing like Gilbert or somebody who like the Ames Tribune would be covering. This is back when the Ames Tribune, by the way, had like 5 sports writers. This is how different all this was. They don't even exist now.
Yeah.
And Rob Gray, this spry sports writer for the Des Moines Register, was there covering the game. And he knew who I was, and I knew who he was, but we had never met, and we shake hands. And, you know, it's just meeting Rob. It's like you felt like you knew him for 5 years. And he's asking me about like my aspirations of the business. And again, I'm completely out of touch with reality. Oh, I'm going to do this. And he's like, basically, Rob's like, Jesus, get out of this business right now.
I can just see it.
Yeah. He's like, get out of it. They're all vultures. They're going to take advantage of you. The corporate greed. I was like, thanks, Rob. Nice to meet you. Really inspiring stuff here.
Thank you for shooting me down.
He's the best. Yeah. No, that's a good. Yeah, get Rob in. I bet maybe Tom Kershell. Like there's a lot of great.
Tom, I love Tom.
Yeah, there's a lot of great possibilities and resources. I think Luch too, man. Like do a follow-up to this one.
Yeah, seriously.
Get Luch in here and talk about what in the hell was he thinking when he started this.
Especially them meeting you. And being like, yeah, this guy, this is the future.
I don't even remember meeting Jason. I don't think I ever met him face to face before I took this job. But that's how passionate I was about getting back to Iowa State.
Right.
Like I was just like, and I'll never forget my wife. She was so pissed. You did what? You quit? Yeah, babe, I'm moving back up. I'm moving in 2 weeks. She go, what?
I know we just agreed to spend the rest of our lives together, but
you just quit on the spot. You didn't even ask me. And I'm like, I thought you would be excited.
I actually would love to be a fly on the wall for that.
Hell, get her on. She wouldn't say much, but yeah, no, it's been quite the ride. Thank you for being a part of it.
Of course. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
I love, thanks to the Ivy College of Business as well. They've been an awesome partner, and this is a perfect podcast to have them be a sponsor for. And then we do have some plans. I actually think I'm really excited about some of the stuff we have cooking for next year, where I think that what we do is going to, I honestly think like we've kind of been like hanging out since COVID and we've evolved.
Yeah.
Like with our game day stuff. And I think we take a next step next year.
I do. I agree.
I think it's coming.
I do too. Evolve or die, right?
Evolve or die.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for paying attention. We appreciate it.